Hey there, AJ Mari here. Do people with borderline personality, do they gaslight just the same as a narcissist? I don't think so. Why do I think and know from years of working with clients, 31 years, that gaslighting isn't really what borderlines are doing? Well, to gaslight, it's a verb, right? To attempt to make a person believe that they are going insane. This is what we see more with the overt grandiose narcissist, with the malignant narcissist and beyond, sometimes maybe with a covert narcissist depending, but not all narcissistic personality disorder people have the same severity of narcissistic personality disorder. So their gaslighting is entirely differently motivated, and it is more targeted, and they have more of a sense of what they're doing, maybe not exactly, but many know that, just like in the movie Gaslight, where gaslighting, the term and the understanding of, comes from. The husband in the movie was plotting to actually make his wife believe she was losing her mind. So gaslight, the verb, to attempt to make a person believe that they are going insane. This is not what people with BP are doing at all. They have no interest in you going insane. They're just trying to find themselves, and it doesn't excuse poor behavior. But people with borderline personality disorder are not gaslighting the way narcissists do. So what are they doing then? So this is tricky though, because you could get hoovered, right? So not just in a case of hoovering, but the relationship itself, and the on or off again, or the recycling relationship. But do people with BP really gaslight just like narcissists do? It's the same thing, and well, the answer really, clinically, and when you look at the motivation behind the behavior and what's really happening and all the chaos and drama and everything, how you're getting hurt, the answer is no, they really don't gaslight the way that narcissists do. But what does that really mean? Because, well, it has a lot to do with borderline projection and borderline projective identification. One thing I will definitely grant, definitely I hear clients on this too, is that it feels like it's gaslighting. Because when a person with BPD, especially if it's your BPDX hoovering you, but in the relationship or in any context, if a person with BPD is trying to, quote, communicate, unquote, to you, it's going to largely involve projection and blaming you, and everything's your fault, and they're externalizing out what's really happening with them because they're really largely unaware, but it doesn't make poor behavior okay or anything. It's not really accurate to say that the borderline gaslights like the narcissist, or even with the same motivation or for the same reason. But you feel like you're being gaslit by a borderline. Do you feel that way, by the way? Because maybe share a thought, a comment on this podcast video. What do you think? Could you acknowledge maybe that people with BPD are projecting a lot, projective identification, you're getting really hurt, they are changing the narrative with the projection. When they change the narrative, it's in a Hoover or in the relationship or here, there, and who knows where, in the chaos and drama roller coaster ride of what's really happening in any given moment for many people out there, different iterations of wherever you're at. When they change the narrative, people think that's gaslighting. People think that's the borderline gaslighting like the narcissist gaslights, but it isn't. With the projection and the projective identification involved in why and how the borderline changes the narrative, externalizes everything out on you, can't take any personal responsibility due to loss of self, etc., if untreated, and not really significantly treated, what that really does to people with codependency really triggers you, really triggers more to the point, and maybe not in your conscious awareness, triggers inside of you leftover unaddressed childhood core woundedness. And then people with codependency have their own, yes, you have your own feelings. Yes, you're getting really hurt. You're losing yourself in the relationship. Maybe you're getting hoovered by somebody with BP, but the bottom line is you're feeling like you're not heard and you're not seen. Those are accurate feelings. It's really painful. So you might feel gaslit because You're like, well, you've been reading about it. And people don't delineate this carefully enough, often enough. BPD is not a form of NPD. BPD is not exactly the same as NPD. Everything the borderline does is not like everything that the person with narcissistic personality disorder does. So you're getting triggered because codependents have a fear of being blamed, of being, thought poorly of not being in that sort of pleasing role that gives you validation and it helps you out with some feelings as you externalize out from your codependency. It's a lot of things onto the person with BPD, externalize out in hoping to help and rescue and fix them to get your needs met, not in any conscious way, more often than not. So when they change the narrative, largely through projection and the internal emotional dysregulation that they have been triggered to feel, not by you, but inside of themselves, and then the way that from an unconscious place, splitting for the person with BPD happens because splitting is a major defense mechanism in BPD. So it's not happening because they almost felt your love or you attained emotional intimacy or really connected with them. No, that's not why. But when they do get into this place of needing to defend and project and change the narrative, and for those reasons, and what's really happening for them internally, they are not gaslighting you, but it's triggering you because people with codependency, with that inherent childhood core woundedness still at play, you're getting really hurt and you're not being seen and heard. And you're not being validated and you're not being understood. And you might be fearing abandonment in a different way than people with BPD do. And none of this, do I say, should take away the responsibility for what the borderline's actually doing and why, because they're not taking personal responsibility. But then I would also say to you as a codependent, if you're not in therapy yet and working this through, then you're not taking personal responsibility for your own feelings or for what's happening for you. So if you're going to just blame the borderline for that entirely, you see where the overlap is between codependency and BPD. What's the difference there? Might be really uncomfortable to hear, but I think it's something a lot of people really do need to become more aware of so that you can make healthier decisions. Like the number one action choice, first decision you need to make is getting into therapy and really starting to emotionally appreciate, understand, and be aware consciously of that everything in your experience isn't the borderline's fault. That you also, in your own way as a codependent, are experiencing what you're experiencing due to being triggered back to your childhood core woundedness, which might not be in your conscious awareness. But the key thing here is you want to know more about this. I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, so that you can learn how to focus on yourself to break these patterns, right? So that you can feel better. Because blaming the borderline, a lot of people are going to do it. You might be doing it, might be, it's part of people's processes, and that's fine. But if you're doing that without getting into therapy, if you're doing that without increasing your conscious awareness, then you're losing out on what you need the most, which is to learn how to focus on you, get to that full no contact place, and stop worrying about what they're doing. And it feels like gaslighting, but it doesn't mean that the borderline is actually gaslighting you. Does that feel like gaslighting to you? Can you see why it might not be, but it feels like it? The BPDX hoovers you. Wow. So much can happen there, and it can often feel very gaslighting when it's their projection and projective identification again. So how you feel versus what they're actually doing, and again, the motivation, which you might not be that worried about. You might not care about that. Let me know in the comments below. What do you think? So it's not really true that they do gaslight like people with BPD gaslight like people with NPD. But I think what is true to say about the way people feel and experience that is that whether you're with somebody with BPD or a narcissist, if you're not aware, because BPD isn't a form of NPD, by the way, if you're not aware of the motivation and why should you be or why do you need to be, you don't. And you don't really see the other side of like what's going on with them, and that's confusing and painful for you, then you can feel like you've been gaslit because they do change narratives, but they don't do the exact same thing as people with narcissistic personality disorder do in the way they gaslight and the motivation behind that with intentionality to absolutely try to take your reality away from you. People with BPD are not that organized. They can be very condescending. They can be hoovering you or opening communication again because you've left it open to just tell you again how awful you were, to project all over you. And then the other interesting facet of this is this borderline gaslighting. Because people with BPD don't gaslight like narcissists, but people feel like they've been gaslit a lot. So I think whatever you feel is real and true and important. But so much of these in the relationships or in when they hoover, when you don't go full no contact, then they're going to be projecting a lot no matter what the reasons are for their hoover, which is going to be something all about them. And often they're telling people in hoovers how you were the bad guy. They've just discovered the greatest thing since sliced bread that's going to change their entire life. So they think. So they're sort of a little bit like not being very realistic about, and they're in extreme denial about, and they might share that with you. And then they might tell you, but like, I know you have this problem, that problem, whatever you shared with them in the relationship, right? Because people with codependency, no disrespect intended, have their own issues and challenges from childhood. And that doesn't mean you deserve anybody else's poor treatment. Absolutely not. But if you don't go full no contact, and if you feel like you can't, and it's very confusing, and you're just like feeling like you're losing your mind and yourself, or you've lost yourself, then that's when you need to get in therapy. And if I resonate with you, I'm out here to work with you and to help you through that process, to be able to make sense out of the senseless, to get a little more clarity, a lot more clarity, and to be able to make these choices for yourself that you really need for your own well-being, mental health, and your healing and recovery journey. One of the reasons and motivations is because they think now they might have solved all their problems, which is ridiculous. Like if it's 2 months, 3 months, 9 months, 11 months, a year later, no. But they might say it like that. And then it feels like gaslighting because what's happening is they twist the whole narrative, right? And they'll be but it's them being so projective. But at the same time as I'm talking about their projection, understand I hear people, clients, and people leave comments on the channel that say they feel gaslit because there's nothing there for you. And when they're telling you whatever they're telling you, it's all for them. Not in some selfish way, but like they just seriously don't have any other emotional skills, which doesn't make it okay. So you can get hoovered or texts or emails that are going to say, well, I figured something out now, which is often really not the case. And then they'll project, like they did when they blamed you with the first split evaluation, when they blame you when they ghosted you, or like you broke up with them, and how much chaos did that involve of all the things they threatened they might do, or, to keep you from leaving, or because that happens to people as well as people with BP that just cheat, monkey branch, ghost, maybe discard, maybe ghost, no explanation. People left just wondering what happened here. So in all this fusing together that happens out there with a lot of poor information sources and really inaccurate information sources, they try to tell you BPD is a form of NPD. They try to shove everything that a person with BPD does into what a narcissist does. It's just not correct. And so I hope that you could hear this and that it was helpful, because you may well feel gaslit by a borderline. They're not all the same. Some are much more severely impacted. And maybe then they're getting closer to BPD, NPD comorbid. It's hard to say, right? But it's possible. But people with BPD do not gaslight. Really, they just don't. And they don't gaslight even if they did a bit, but they really don't, like people with narcissistic personality disorder do. So if this is the information that you've been hearing elsewhere, that, oh, borderlines gaslight like narcissists do, and you feel gaslit, I hope that what I've said in this podcast video might give you pause to kind of rethink that, and to also realize that you need now to take responsibility for your codependency and what you need to learn more about you by taking that one action step, which is get into therapy. It's not going to help you to keep focusing on the borderline, blaming the borderline, or enjoying watching or listening to videos or whatever that just keep on conflating everything all together. It's not going to give you clarity. It's going to keep you focused outside of yourself. And to change these patterns of codependent relating and break the unhealthy bond and really be able to do some positive, deep healing work in therapy, you need to learn how to focus on you and stop giving so much power to the borderline.